The man would hit every luxury car he passed with great force. After confirming that the car is not installed anti-theft system, he skillfully took out a baseball. The door of the car was opened in no time. The man took out 2 wires from his bag and inserted them into the gap of the center console. With his hands, he gently broke it. The whole center console was easily removed. This will bring him a lot of money. But the man didn't seem to be satisfied. He searched through the car again, but there was nothing else of value in the car. He found only a pair of sunglasses. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. The more he wanted to pee. So he spilled iced tea all over the back seat. After releasing it, he was satisfied and ready to leave. But the door was locked. He tries again and again, but the door wouldn't open. The man realized something was wrong. He rushed to the passenger side, but this side of the door cannot be opened. He tried to open the rear door, but none of them would open. The man instantly panicked, so he went to the trunk to find a way out. He grabbed the armrest, tried to kick open the back glass, but the glass was unusually strong. He kicked it several times, but it didn't budge. In desperation, he went to the back row where he had just peed. He grabbed both seats with both hands. He kicked the window as hard as he could. However, after a lot of operations, but the window didn't budge, having used up half of his strength. Unbelieving, the man climbed to the front and tried again. The window still didn't budge. After many fruitless attempts, the man's mood gradually became violent. He shook the steering wheel frantically. Then he pressed the starter switch, but the car didn't respond. The man was in complete despair. Suddenly a pedestrian appeared outside the car. He ducked down and hid. After the pedestrians left, the man suddenly remembered something. He removed the cover of the back seat. He took out the toolbox that came with the car. He picked out the most useful tool he could find, and then he smashed the window like a madman. But the window was as solid as steel. No matter how hard he smashed it, it didn't even make a scratch. He tried to smash all the windows of the car. Eventually, he stopped because he was exhausted, but the man did not give up. After a few moments, he gritted his teeth and insisted. He smashed the handle on the door. Then he removed the armrest. He was convinced that with his years of experience in theft, could easily find the lock cylinder of the car door. The result is that after some operation, instead, he cut his arm. He did not care about the pain and wanted to escape as soon as possible. Turned around and continued to smash the inside door panel. However, the door was extremely hard. Sparks were immediately smashed out. He was so angry that he pushed down the back seat and cut the carpet. He tried to find a way out from under the car. He found that the bottom of the car was also welded with thick steel plates. The man felt instantly desperate. He pulled a pistol from his bag. He hid behind the seat and aimed at the windshield. He was dumbfounded. The glass was unbelievable. Not only did the bullet not leave a mark on it, instead, it bounced off his thigh. The man was screaming in pain. Seeing that the wound is bleeding continuously, he took off his shirt and bandaged it. The pain was so intense that he almost fainted. Luckily, he was able to stop the bleeding in time. At that moment, a woman suddenly came over. The man instantly saw hope. He hurriedly put his hand on the car window, trying to attract the attention of the other side. But the woman outside the car did not notice. Seeing that the woman turned around and was about to leave, the man hurriedly shouted. Then he quickly went to the main driver's side and sounded the horn. But the next moment, the woman disappeared from sight. Seeing that the hope of rescue was gone, he was so angry that he sat down on the seat. Then the man suddenly remembered that he had a cell phone, so he dialed for help. Unexpectedly, before the other party could answer, the cell phone automatically turned off when the battery ran out. This makes the man completely crazy. Before he knew it, it was night. The gunshot wound on his leg was killing him. Suddenly, the sound of insects chirping in his ears. This makes the man even more irritated. He threw up his fist and tried to kill the bugs. By the time he woke up, it was early the next morning. He subconsciously unscrewed the cap of the Coke bottle. He licked it and realized that he had already drunk all the Coke. Soon he noticed the fog condensing on the glass, so he approached the glass. He skillfully licked it to rehydrate it. Then he reinstalled the center screen and chose an upbeat song to ease his irritable mood. Soon the man was swaying to the song. After one song, the man regained hope. He climbed to the back of the car. Then he banged on the door of the car. He believed that if he didn't give up so easily, he would be able to escape from this hellish prison. But then the music suddenly stopped. Then a cell phone rang on the center screen. The man trembled and pressed the answer button, but he didn't dare to make a sound because it was the owner of the car. They claimed the car had been stolen 28 times. Just a few days ago, a brake pad was stolen. As a result, the whole family died in a car accident, but he was on a business trip that day and survived. When he heard this, the man became emotional because he wasn't the one who stole the brake pads. Now he has to suffer for someone else. But the car owner didn't listen to the man's defense, chose to hang up the phone directly. Surprisingly, the car owner did not retaliate against him. Instead, He remotely turned on the air conditioning in the car. The man immediately put his face close to the air vents, greedily enjoying the cold air. But he soon felt regret. He saw that the wind speed was increasing, but he couldn't turn it off or on. Then the temperature dropped. Soon it was down to 0. The man was shivering from the cold. He had no choice but to put his clothes back on over the wound. He tore off half of his jeans to bandage the wound. Then he grabbed a footrest cover and blocked the front air vent. Then he tore up the newspaper and stuffed it into the vents, although all the vents were blocked. But the man was still shivering. Before long, he was huddled in the back. His lips were turning purple. His face was turning pale. The man thought he was going to freeze to death. But then the air conditioning suddenly turned off. Then the owner of the car called again. This time, before the other party could say anything, the man took the initiative to admit his mistake. He pleaded with the owner to let him live. But the car owner didn't want to let him off so easily, claiming that the best is yet to come. After that, the owner hung up the phone. When the man did not know what to do, a police car stopped in front of him. The police came down and looked around the car. The man's hope was renewed. He desperately knocked on the glass and shouted for help, trying to get the attention of the police. But no matter how hysterically he shouted, the police outside the car just couldn't hear him. They just wrote a ticket and put it on the windshield, then turned around and left the scene, leaving only the man inside the car desperately shouting. The funny thing is that the reason for the penalty is that the color of the car film is too dark. At that moment, it was raining heavily outside, but he subconsciously opened his mouth to drink water. Unexpectedly, the owner of the car called again and asked for the man's ID number. The man said he wanted to trade for water. The car owner agreed. After getting the ID number, he told the man to go to the trunk to get water. The man hurriedly tore open the trunk. He saw a hose, but it was only half full. He was so dehydrated, he drank it all in one gulp. He didn't realize that the owner of the car turned on the heater right after he drank the water. The depressed man was very depressed. In no time, the temperature rose to 40 degrees. The constant heat was killing him. The man had to take off his clothes to cool down. This went on for more than an hour, until the owner of the car hung up the phone to turn off the heating. He hadn't eaten for 3 days and nights. Hungry and thirsty, the man tried the manual. It's hard to swallow, but it's better than starving to death. After a little energy, the man turned on his own faucet. The taste was worse than toilet water, but at this point, he had no choice. If his body became dehydrated, he could die. After an indeterminate amount of time, 2 teenagers came to the car. They tried to open the door with a steel ruler. The man is instantly energized. He stares at them with anticipation, but the door wouldn't open at all. Soon passersby noticed the theft. 2 teenagers were caught and beaten. The man silently watched the scene in front of him. He felt very helpless and speechless. He swore that once he left this cage, he vowed to be a good man when he got out. At night, the owner of the car called again, but this time the man did not answer. At the moment, he was so hungry that his head was numb. All he could think about was protein. He grabbed the little worm. He was about to put it in his mouth, but he stopped because the bug was trapped in the car with him. The next day, the owner of the car called again. He told the man there was chocolate cake hidden in the brake pedal. The man got it and devoured it. And with his energy supply, the man's hope was rekindled. As he continued his efforts, he finally cut a small hole in the steel door. At that moment, an old man stopped in front of the car. The man desperately called out for help through the gap, but his voice could not be heard outside. Once again, hope turned to disappointment. He put the sun-dried battery back into his cell phone. To his surprise, the screen lights up. He couldn't wait to call for help, but the next moment the phone turned off. As time passes, the man's health is getting weaker and weaker. At this rate, he won't make it to next year. At night, he pressed the car's starter button again and again. Surprisingly, the dashboard really lit up. He was so disoriented that he instantly came to his senses. The man tried to put the car in reverse gear, and the car actually moved. He hurriedly shifted gears again and prepared to leave. But then something happened. The car's gearshift lever was stuck in reverse, so the man made a crazy decision. First, he adjusted his breathing. Then he slowly pulled out his seatbelt. Everything was ready. Then he pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The car drove quickly towards the back of the road, and finally crashed into the railings. All the airbags popped in a flash. The man was dazed by the impact, but he also managed to crack the rear windshield. He crawled outside as hard as he could. He breathed in the fresh air greedily. I don't know how long it took. The man finally came to the door of a restaurant. He pushed open the door and walked straight to the front. Then he took out a bottle of mineral water from the cooler, and he drank it all by himself. Then he grabbed 2 burgers. In front of the waiter's shocked eyes, he limped to the table. This was the best food he'd ever eaten. Suddenly the manager of the restaurant came over and asked him to pay the bill, but the man pulled out a gun. The manager was instantly put on the spot. The next moment he sat up in shock. It was just a beautiful dream. Now he feels worse than death. The man made a bold decision. He took out his pistol and prepared to kill himself, but there were no bullets in the gun. He was in deep despair. Now he can't even die. He could only be tortured to death by the owner of the car. At that moment, a man suddenly appeared in front of the car. It was the owner of the car. Leon. He came to the car and opened the door. He was almost killed by the stench of the car, but he was prepared. Then he took out a bottle of air purifier from his bag and sprayed it all over the car, and then he sat down in the car. But Leon didn't do anything drastic. He just picked up the pistol on the ground. He reloaded the magazine and reloaded the gun. Then he put the gun on the front of the car. Then he spoke without delay. It turns out the owner of the car sent the bullets for the man's benefit. In order to torture the man, he took out a bag of chocolate beans and then put them in his mouth. The man on the other side of the car gagged, but there was nothing he could do. He could only watch the other man enjoying himself. Then Leon tortured his injured leg. The man screamed in pain. I don't know how long it took. Leon stopped the torture, but just as he let his guard down, the man shot him. He struggled to open the car door and landed heavily on the ground. Then he crawled forward. Exhausted, he thought he'd gotten away with it, but Leon came after him. He grabbed the man and put him in the car. A police officer on patrol was just passing by. A confrontation ensued. Leon explained the situation, but the cop couldn't tell if it was true or not. The confrontation lasted 2 hours. Soon a large number of police arrived. There was a large crowd of onlookers and media in the neighborhood. That's when Leon told his story. His wife had been in an accident and the police had dismissed it as an ordinary traffic accident. It was just an ordinary traffic accident, but he knew that it was human-caused. All he wanted was justice. Then Leon began to incite the crowd. He asked them what they would do about the thieves. All of them hated the scum. With the situation at a standstill, the police sent a negotiator. Before they could say anything, Leon let go of the thief. As the police looked on in amazement, he got into the car with a strange smile. Then he put his cell phone on the roof of the car. The screen showed a countdown. The armed police were about to go forward, but the negotiator immediately stopped. With a violent explosion, Leon finally went to another world. The ending of the story is a bit unbelievable. The thief managed to survive, but the owner of the car paid the price with his life. I don't know what the director was thinking. May Leon never meet the thief again in heaven. Well, today's story is over.